Rose and Lyra made their way to the outskirts of town, the adrenaline from the battle still coursing through their veins. Lyra seemed to know just the place, a small, unassuming inn that promised both discretion and comfort. As they settled into a quiet corner of the inn's tavern, Lyra ordered drinks for them both, a rich amber liquid that smelled of spices and warmth. Rose accepted gratefully, the events of the day catching up with her in a wave of exhaustion and relief. Over drinks they talked, about the Black Dawn, about their pasts, about their shared determination to stop the spread of darkness. Rose found herself opening up to Lyra in a way she hadn't with anyone in a long time. There was something about the elf's easy confidence, her sharp wit and fierce loyalty, that drew Rose in. As the evening wore on and the drinks kept flowing, Rose became increasingly aware of the way Lyra was looking at her, the playful glint in her eye, the way her gaze seemed to linger on Rose's lips, her throat, the curves of her body. The elf's flirtations, which had been subtle at first, grew increasingly bold as the night deepened. A light touch on the hand here, a suggestive comment there. Lyra's intentions were becoming clear, and to her surprise, Rose found herself responding, leaning into Lyra's touch, meeting her suggestive banter with quips of her own. Perhaps it was the thrill of the fight still singing in her blood, or the comfort of finding an ally in this dark and dangerous place. Or perhaps it was simply the magnetic pull of Lyra herself, her beauty, her strength, the way she seemed to understand Rose in a way few others did. Whatever the reason, Rose found herself wanting more. When Lyra suggested they take their conversations somewhere more private, Rose agreed without hesitation. In the candle-lit warmth of Lyra's room, things quickly heated up. Armor was shed, clothing discarded as they explored each other with a passion born of shared danger and newfound connection. Rose lost herself in the feel of Lyra's skin against hers, in the taste of her lips and the sound of her gasps of pleasure. For a few blissful hours, she forgot about the Black Dawn, about the weight of her responsibilities. There was only Lyra and the fire they ignited in each other. Afterwards, as they lay tangled together in the sheets, Rose felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. She knew the road ahead was still dangerous, that their fight against the Black Dawn was far from over. But with Lyra by her side, she felt like she could face anything. Together they would stand against the darkness, in this realm and any other. For now, though, Rose was content to drift off to sleep in the warmth of Lyra's embrace, to let herself have this moment of comfort and connection. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles to be fought. But tonight belonged to them. Rose awoke slowly, her head pounding and her mouth feeling like it was filled with cotton. The sunlight streaming through the window seemed unnaturally bright, making her squint and groan as she tried to sit up. As she moved, she became acutely aware of her own nudity, the sheets sliding over her bare skin. Memories of the previous night came back to her in fragmented pieces, the fight at the warehouse, the drinks at the inn, Lyra. Lyra. The name sent a jolt through Rose, snapping her into full wakefulness. She looked around the room, but there was no sign of the elven woman. The bed beside her was cold, the sheets rumpled but empty. Had it all been a dream? Some vivid fantasy conjured by her adrenaline-fueled mind? Rose ran a hand through her tangled hair, trying to make sense of the hazy memories. But then, as she turned her head, she felt a twinge of pain on the side of her neck. Her fingers flew to the spot, encountering what felt like a bruise or a bite mark. Rose's eyes widened, her heart suddenly pounding. It hadn't been a dream. Lyra had been here, in this bed, their bodies entwined in passion. The evidence was right there on her skin. But where was she now? Rose got out of bed, ignoring the protest of her aching muscles. She scanned the room, looking for any sign of Lyra's presence, any clue as to where she might have gone. On the small table by the window, she spotted a piece of paper, weighted down by an empty glass. Rose snatched it up, her eyes quickly scanning the elegant script. Rose, had to take care of some things. Didn't want to wake you. You looked like you needed the rest. Meet me at the old clock tower at sundown. We have much to discuss. L. Rose read the note twice, her mind spinning. Lyra's disappearance was sudden but not entirely surprising given what she now knew about the elf. Still, the thought of facing the day without her new ally by her side was an unsettling one. She sighed, setting the note back down. She had a few hours until sundown, time to pull herself together, to try to make sense of everything that had happened. But first, a bath. Rose could still smell Lyra on her skin, could still feel the ghost of her touch. As much as part of her wanted to savour those sensations, to cling to the memory of their shared passion, she knew she needed a clear head for whatever lay ahead. And so, with a final glance at the rumpled bed, Rose headed for the washroom, determined to face this new day and all its challenges, with the same strength and fire she always had. Even if part of her heart now felt as bruised and tender as the mark on her neck, Rose arrived at the old clock tower at sundown, her heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with the climb up the stairs. She found Lyra waiting for her, leaning against the weathered stone, a playful smirk on her lips. "Well, well," Lyra purred, her eyes raking over Rose's form. "Look what the cat dragged in." Rose fought back a blush, determined to meet Lyra's banter with her own. "I didn't realise you were waiting for a delivery. Should I have brought a bell?" Lyra's laugh was rich and warm. "Oh, I like you." She pushed off from the wall, moving closer to Rose. "Sleep well?" Rose shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant despite the way her skin tingled at Lyra's proximity. "Well enough, though I wouldn't have minded a more personal wake-up call." Lyra's smirk widened. "Duty's called, I'm afraid, but I like your thinking." She reached out, tracing a finger along Rose's collarbone. Rose suppressed a shiver. "Last night was fun," Lyra said, her voice low, "but it was also a lesson if you're willing to learn." Rose raised an eyebrow. "A lesson in what, exactly?" "In power," Lyra replied. Her finger continued its path, dipping lower. "The power of desire, of seduction. These can be weapons, Rose, as potent as any fire or blade." Rose swallowed, her voice coming out slightly huskier than intended. "I'm listening." Lyra smiled, a cat that had caught the canary. "Good. Lesson 1. Always leave them wanting more." With that, she stepped back, leaving Rose feeling suddenly cold. Over the next few days, Lyra's lessons continued, interwoven with their ongoing hunt for the Black Dawn. "The key," Lyra said as they tracked a lead through the market district, "is to make everything a tease, a promise of what could be." She demonstrated by haggling with a merchant, her voice and posture a masterclass in subtle flirtation. The poor man never stood a chance, handing over his information with a dazed smile. "Show you can flirt. You'll get that discount," Rose said admiringly. She looked at Lyra with admiration. "How did you learn this?" Lyra winked. "From many teachers." Rose tried to hide her disappointment at Lyra's evasiveness. When they infiltrated a Black Dawn hideout, Lyra used a different approach. "Sometimes," she whispered as they crept through the shadows, "desire is about the thrill, the danger." She pulled Rose into a darkened alcove just as a guard passed, their bodies pressed close. Rose could feel Lyra's heartbeat, could smell the spice of her skin. "Is this another lesson?" Rose breathed. Lyra's smile gleamed in the darkness. "If you want it to be." But it wasn't all teasing and innuendo. There were moments of genuine connection too, quiet conversations over drinks in tucked-away taverns. "Why are you helping me?" Rose asked one night, emboldened by the warmth of the fire and the buzz of alcohol. "Really?" Lyra was quiet for a long moment. "Let's just say I know what it's like to be hunted by your past." Rose wanted to press further, but Lyra turned to her with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. But that's a story for another time. Tonight, I want to hear more about you. And so it went. A dance of flirtation and evasion, of heat and mystery. Rose felt herself being drawn in, even as she tried to maintain her guard. But with every charged moment, every shared secret and breathless escape, she could feel her defenses crumbling. She just hoped that when they finally fell, Lyra would be there to catch her. Rose and Lyra were staking out a suspected Black Dawn meeting point, hidden in the shadows of a rooftop overlooking the seedy tavern. The night air was cool, but Rose could feel the heat emanating from Lyra's body as they lay side by side, watching the door below. "You know," Lyra murmured, her breath tickling Rose's ear, "if you want to get better at flirting, you need to practice." Rose turned to her, eyebrow raised. "Are you offering to be my training dummy?" Lyra grinned. "I prefer the term sparring partner, and yes, I am." Rose considered for a moment, then nodded. "All right, hit me with your best shot." Lyra's eyes gleamed in the moonlight. "Okay, let's start simple. Give me a compliment, but make it flirty." Rose thought for a moment. "Your eyes are like stars," she said. "Bright, beautiful, and impossible to look away from." Lyra chuckled softly. "Not bad. A little cliché, but delivered with confidence. Now try to build on it. Keep the momentum going." Rose leaned closer, her voice dropping to a purr. "And your lips. They're like a promise. One I'm dying to see fulfilled." Lyra's breath hitched just slightly. "Good. Very good. You're a quick study." "I have a good teacher," Rose replied, letting her hand brush against Lyra's thigh. "Though I wonder what other lessons you might have in store." Lyra laughed, low and throaty. "Patience, my dear. The best lessons are learned over time." Their banter was interrupted by movement at the tavern door. Rose snapped back to attention, but she could feel the heat lingering between them, the unspoken promise of more lessons to come. Over the next few days, Rose found herself using her new skills more and more. When they needed information from a tight-lipped informant, Rose took the lead, leaning close and letting her words drip with suggestive promise. The information flowed like wine. "I'm impressed," Lyra said afterward, her eyes sparkling with something like pride. "You're a natural." Rose grinned, feeling a flush of pleasure at the praise. "I learned from the best." During a tense negotiation with a black market dealer, Rose used a different tactic. She let her gaze linger on the dealer's muscular arms, her tongue darting out to wet her lips. The dealer stumbled over his words, his price dropping with each flirtatious glance. "You're dangerous," Lyra said later, as they walked away with the supplies they needed at half the asking price. "I almost feel sorry for the poor bastard." "Almost?" Rose asked, bumping her shoulder playfully against Lyra's. "Almost," Lyra confirmed with a wink. "But then I remember how much I enjoy watching you work." Even in the midst of battle, Rose found ways to incorporate her new skills. When they were ambushed by a group of Black Dawn thugs, Rose used a moment of close combat to whisper in her opponent's ear, her voice a seductive purr even as she drove her knee into his groin. "Was that really necessary?" Lyra asked afterward, stepping over the groaning man. Rose shrugged, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. "Just putting my lessons into practice. Desire is a weapon, right?" Lyra shook her head, but she couldn't hide her smile. "You are a terrifyingly apt pupil, you know that." But for all the playful banter and heated glances, there were still moments of genuine connection, of vulnerability. One night, as they camped in the woods outside the city, Lyra turned to Rose with a seriousness she rarely showed. "I want you to know," she said softly, "that this, between us, it's not just a game to me. It's not just about the lessons or the flirting." Rose felt her heart skip a beat. "What is it about, then?" Lyra was quiet for a long moment. "It's about trust," she said finally. "It's about finding someone who understands, who's been through the same kind of darkness and come out the other side." Rose reached out, taking Lyra's hand in hers. "I do understand," she said softly. "More than you know." They sat like that for a long time, hand in hand, the unspoken connection between them feeling more real, more solid than ever before. It was a moment of peace, of understanding, amidst the chaos of their mission. A moment that, for Rose, felt like the true beginning of something. Something that, despite all her newfound skills in flirtation and seduction, she didn't quite have the words for yet. But she was beginning to think that maybe, just maybe, Lyra was the one who could teach her. Not just how to flirt or how to fight, but how to trust, how to love. In the flickering light of their campfire, Rose held onto that thought, that hope. And she held onto Lyra's hand, an anchor in the darkness. Rose stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her corset and taking a deep breath. The plan was set. She would charm her way into the Black Dawn gathering, posing as a potential recruit, while Lyra snuck in the back with their weapons and gear. "Remember," Lyra said, coming up behind her and resting her hands on Rose's shoulders, "confidence is key. They need to believe you belong there." Rose nodded, meeting Lyra's eyes in the mirror. "I've got this. You just make sure you're in position when the time comes." Lyra grinned, her hands sliding down Rose's arms in a way that made her shiver. "Oh, I will be. But first?" She reached around, her fingers deftly undoing the top 2 buttons of Rose's shirt. "There, that should get their attention." Rose raised an eyebrow, a playful smirk on her lips. "Are you trying to get me recruited or ravished?" Lyra chuckled, her breath warm against Rose's ear. "Can't it be both?" She gave Rose a gentle squeeze, then stepped back. "Now go. Show them what you're made of." Rose took another deep breath, then turned and headed for the door, putting an extra sway in her hips. She could feel Lyra's eyes on her, could practically hear the appreciative purr in her throat. At the entrance to the Black Dawn's hideout, Rose was stopped by a burly guard. "Hold up there, sweetheart. This is a private party." Rose looked up at him through her lashes, a coy smile playing on her lips. "Oh, but I was so hoping to join in the fun. I've heard such intriguing things about your little group." The guard's eyes dipped to her cleavage just as she'd intended. "Is that so? And what exactly have you heard?" Rose stepped closer, trailing a finger down the guard's chest. "That you're the ones with the real power in this city, that you're not afraid to take what you want." She let her voice drop to a purr. "I like men who aren't afraid." The guard swallowed, his resolve visibly weakening. "Well, I suppose we could always use some fresh blood. Go on in." Rose smiled, letting her hand linger a moment longer before stepping past him. "Thank you. I promise you won't regret it." Inside, the gathering was in full swing. Dark mages and thugs mingled around a central fire, their conversations a low hum of sinister intent. Rose wove her way through the crowd, smiling and nodding at those who caught her eye. She spotted the leader almost immediately. He was tall and lean, with a cruel twist to his mouth and eyes that seemed to see straight through her. Rose steeled herself and approached him, putting an extra sway in her step. "Well, well," the leader said as she drew near, his eyes raking over her form. "What have we here? A little lost lamb, wandering into the wolves' den?" Rose met his gaze steadily, her smile never faltering. "Oh, I'm not lost. In fact, I think I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." The leader's eyebrows rose, a flicker of interest in his cold eyes. "Is that so? And what makes you think you belong here, among the Black Dawn?" Rose leaned in, her voice low and seductive. "Because I'm not afraid of the dark. In fact..." She let her hand rest on his arm, feeling the tension in his muscles. "I rather enjoy it." The leader stared at her for a long moment, then threw his head back and laughed. "Oh, you are a bold one, aren't you? I think you'll fit in just fine here." Rose smiled, triumph singing in her veins. She was in. Now all she had to do was wait for Lyra's signal. As if on cue, there was a sudden commotion from the back of the room. Shouts of alarm, the clang of metal on metal. The Black Dawn members surged to their feet, reaching for weapons. Rose didn't hesitate. In one swift motion, she drew the hidden knives from her sleeves and lunged at the leader. He barely had time to register surprise before she was on him, her blades finding the gaps in his armor with deadly precision. Around her, the room erupted into chaos. Black Dawn mages hurled spells, but Rose was too quick, too agile. She danced through the fray, her knives and her fire magic working in lethal harmony. And then Lyra was there, a whirlwind of blades and elven grace, cutting through the enemy ranks like a scythe through wheat. Together they were unstoppable, a perfect storm of skill and power. In minutes, it was over. The Black Dawn lay broken and beaten at their feet, their leader a crumpled heap on the floor. Rose stood amid the carnage, her chest heaving, her blood singing with the thrill of victory. Lyra approached her, sheathing her blades, a wild grin on her face. "Not bad for a little lost lamb." Rose laughed, the sound bright and fierce in the sudden silence. "What can I say? I had a good teacher." Lyra's grin softened, her eyes shining with something warm and proud. "That you did." She reached out, brushing a strand of hair from Rose's face. "That you did." And there, in the aftermath of battle, standing over the broken bodies of their enemies, Rose felt a surge of something she hadn't felt in a long, long time. Hope, pride, and something else. Something deeper and more profound. Something that felt a lot like love. She leaned into Lyra's touch, letting herself savor the moment, the feeling. They had won tonight, but more than that, Rose had found something she thought she'd lost forever. A partner, a friend, and maybe, just maybe, something more. The future was uncertain, the path ahead still fraught with danger. But with Lyra by her side, Rose felt ready to face anything. Ready to fight, to love, to live, no matter what the darkness threw their way. Rose and Lyra stumbled back into their campsite, exhausted but exhilarated from their successful raid on the Black Dawn gathering. The adrenaline was still pumping through their veins, the thrill of victory mixing with the heady rush of their growing connection. Lyra threw her pack down and stretched, her lithe body arching in the firelight. "We make a good team, you and I," she said, her voice warm with affection. Rose couldn't help but smile, even as her heart raced at the sight of Lyra's silhouette against the flames. "We do," she agreed, settling down on a log by the fire. "I couldn't have done that without you." Lyra waved a hand dismissively, but her eyes sparkled with pleasure at the praise. "Oh, I think you could have. But it was much more fun together, wasn't it?" She rummaged in her pack for a moment, then pulled out a bottle with a flourish. "And now I think we deserve a celebration. I've been saving this for a special occasion." Rose raised an eyebrow as Lyra uncorked the bottle and poured a deep red liquid into 2 cups. "Wine? In the middle of a mission?" Lyra grinned, handing Rose a cup. "Not just any wine. This is a vintage from my homeland, aged to perfection. It's said to bring luck and fortune to those who share it." She raised her cup, the firelight glinting off the ruby liquid. "To victory," she toasted, "and to partnership." Rose hesitated for just a moment, a flicker of something uncertain passing through her. But looking at Lyra, at the warmth and affection in her eyes, she pushed the feeling aside. They had been through so much together, had forged a bond that went beyond mere alliance. If she couldn't trust Lyra, who could she trust? "To victory," she echoed, clinking her cup against Lyra's, "and to partnership." She raised the cup to her lips, the rich scent of the wine filling her nostrils. Lost in the moment, in the warmth of Lyra's touch and the depth of her gaze, lifted the cup to her lips and drank deeply. The wine was rich and heady, warming her from the inside out. But as she lowered the cup, a sudden dizziness washed over her, The world tilted, Lyra's face blurring before her. "Lyra," she mumbled, her tongue feeling thick and clumsy in her mouth. What's happening?" Lyra's face swam into focus, her expression a mask of sorrow and regret. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm so sorry, Rose." And as the darkness rushed up to claim her, as her body went limp and the cup slipped from her fingers, Rose's last thought was one of shocked betrayal. Lyra, her partner, her friend, had drugged her. The world went black and Rose knew no more.